it's not, you know, the undiscovered. Have you been to Bali or lived there before?
Yeah, yeah.
These places, how would you compare living in, I think Phuket to Bali is a more fair comparison. What do you prefer? What are the advantages, disadvantages, things you like, you don't like?
So if I had to compare Bali to Phuket, I'm going to say beach club vibe Bali up here. Lifestyle wise, Phuket higher up. Bali, I think even if you live there, I got a mate that came down this weekend for the company. He's been living for he's about 4 years in Bali now, and he's not tired. He says the traffic's horrible, the tourists are horrible. That's it. You just got tourists everywhere. When we went as well to Bali, it felt, if you come to the beaches here in Phuket, you've got a fair mix of expats and tourists. When you go to Bali, it's just tourists. And those photos that you see everywhere, those videos, it's that whole Instagram reality versus, expectation. And it's always the reality. It's like you've got to wait in these queues just to get a photo. Or I would say
I never thought of that in that sense. Okay, Phuket, we have Patong, and that's all tourists. But actually up in Bang Tao or the Soi, well, Bang Tao more in that sense that it's Surin Beach, yes, but all the gyms around here, it's mostly expats. I would say the definitely the majority. But yeah, I never thought about that in Bali because you go to Canggu or Kuta or, these different areas. It's probably, where is the expat spot in Bali? Only probably Canggu, but it's probably a good mix of like almost 50-50 of maybe people that are only there for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months.
I would say, look, I personally like Ubud in Bali, and I found the reason for that, it's more open. There's less tourists because it's, the rice fields and coffee shops and cafes. And then you go to Canggu and it's like horrible. And what's the airport area?
Denpasar?
Yeah, that was
Denpasar.
horrible.
Oh, and then Kuta's like where the bombings were.
Yeah.
With the big clubs and the hard rocks there. Yeah.
I found that airport area was absolutely horrible. We had to stay there at night, and it felt like Pattaya times 10.
Yeah, it's like
horrible.
Patong, Pattaya.
No. Patong, I'm not a big fan of. The soy is amazing, but Thailand has this weird, where Bali doesn't. Thailand's got this weird thing. If you've been living here enough, you can see the expats from the tourists. You can walk down the road, go onto the beach, and you can see which ones are tourists, which ones are expats. And the Thais can see that as well. It's weird. It's just a weird thing.
The way I don't know if it's an analogy to explain it. It's when you live in Asia long enough, you can be like, you're Korean, you're Chinese, you're Filipino. Yeah. If you ask me, how do you know? I'm like, I can't explain how I know. It's the mannerisms. Know. It's the energy. Yeah. And it's the same for the tourist. I guess for the tourist, it's pretty easy to spot a Russian in a white t-shirt with the helmet on the motorbike and half a signal on looking for a road. Okay, this is a tourist, 100%. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of use that as well with like Asians living in Asia. I can just tell that person's South Korean or that person's Filipino just by looking at them. But I don't know how.
But in Bali, you can't. It's very difficult to see which ones are expats. Because if you go to a beach club in Bali, I'd say maybe 1/4 might be expats, people actually living there. But they've sort of taken on I think they take on the same lifestyle as a continued tourist. If that makes sense. It's like they're living in a long-term tourist role.
Yeah, and then you're never really grounded or settled. For me personally, like we were even thinking to go up to Chiang Mai and do like 3 months or 4 months. I'm like, no, I'd go for a year, maybe. But then and I think the way I actually thought about doing it is finding another person like me that would do a house swap. Be like, you got a place, I got a place, but let's commit to a year. And like, that's it. There's no getting out of this contract. And then I this way, I don't think you have to adjust your home too much. Because when you start to live in a place for over a couple of years, even though you maybe not own it and rent it, it starts to look like a home.
Yeah, you put effort into it. Right. You put effort to changing it it becomes more you. It's like sort of a virtual reality of how you see things around you. And you make it like that. And that's yours. And then when you move, you've got to root all that up. You got to start over again. Well, it costs you money. And then second thing, it's time. And then it's stress. We just moved house as well about a week ago before coming here. And I'm not a type of person that moves into a place and that's it. I paint things. I change things. Yeah. I change the bum guns. I change taps. I change bulbs. I want yellow globes. It's so much that you do because that's you. and you want to put that into the place. And if you don't, you're uncomfortable. Yeah. It's that feeling of, like you said, you're not grounded. Yeah. You don't come home and be like, I feel good.
If you enjoyed this content, we're doing 5 clips like this a week. If you want to watch the full podcast, click here.